Have you ever played an open-world video game, maybe something like Grand Theft Auto, and felt that weird, hidden guilty pleasure of causing just absolute, unregulated chaos? Like launching a rocket at a virtual helicopter, or just creating complete mayhem purely for the thrill of it, knowing there won't be any real-world repercussions? We've all kind of been there, right?
Well, welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into Jason Gale's fascinating and honestly somewhat controversial book, How to Analyze People with Dark Psychology. We're going to unpack Gale's theories on predatory behavior while, keeping a healthy, skeptical eye on his overall framework. Do we all actually harbor a dark side? And honestly, more importantly, how do we defend ourselves against those who give in to theirs? Let's find out.
Okay, so let's jump into this by picturing Freud's incredibly famous iceberg model. This is a great way to illustrate how the human mind is structured. While that little tip peeking above the water is our everyday conscious thought, Gale points out that our most dangerous, irrational desires, they're buried way deep down in the unconscious mind. That's the massive, hidden chunk of ice beneath the surface that we literally never acknowledge at polite dinner parties.
Now, here is the absolutely crucial distinction. Normal psychology studies our typical, everyday repressed thoughts, standard human behavior stuff. But Gale argues that dark psychology zeroes in strictly on that terrifying, totally involuntary drive to destroy or prey on other people. It looks specifically at those chilling moments when human actions are entirely devoid of any purpose or rational goal whatsoever.
Section 1. The 99% Rule, Adlerian Theory, and the Dark Singularity.
All right, to really get Gale's framework, we first have to look at the Adlerian theory of human behavior. Basically, this theory says that 99% of human actions are purposive, meaning they have a clear, rational goal. We do things for a reason. But Gale's somewhat rigid framework focuses entirely on that terrifying remaining 1%, that tiny dark fraction where an action has absolutely no rational purpose. For that 1%, Gale maps out this chilling, three-step descent into psychopathy. It's essentially a path that starts from a single initial urge, spirals down a deteriorating psychological tunnel, and ends straight in pure malice. Let's break down exactly what goes wrong at each of these three critical steps.
It all kicks off with step 1, what Gale calls a dark factor. And listen, this isn't just a fleeting bad mood. It's an overwhelming internal pressure that pushes someone to victimize others without any logical motive, like revenge or money. Think of an arsonist who has this uncontrollable, involuntary urge to set a building on fire literally just for the sake of watching it burn. Gale argues that normal people suppress these urges pretty easily, but those who become predators, they don't. Which really forces us to question where the line between normal and abnormal truly lies, doesn't it?
That lack of suppression marks the second step, the Dark Continuum. This is the slippery slope. As a person repeatedly acts on these malicious thoughts over time, the empathy centers in their brain literally show reduced activity. Gale presents these chilling case studies of individuals who started with minor acts of purposeless cruelty, maybe towards animals or property. But over the years, those acts systematically eroded their compassion until their guilt just vanished, marching them steadily toward a point of no return.
Which lands us at the absolute bottom, the final destination, the dark singularity. Once that point of no return is crossed, they plummet into this psychological state that Gale describes as a realm of pristine evil. Inside the dark singularity, human actions are completely devoid of purpose, remorse, or compassion. To someone in this state, anyone and everyone is simply viewed as potential prey. And this is your very first line of self-defense, understanding this absolute lack of remorse. You simply cannot rationalize or negotiate with someone who has reached this singularity.
Section 2. The Arsenal of the Dark, Covert Manipulation. So how do these individuals actually operate out in the wild, and how do they pick their targets? Well, predators actively hunt for specific vulnerability cues, things like extreme agreeableness, low self-esteem, or maybe someone going through a recent personal tragedy. Once they spot those cues, they use this highly subtle tactic, playing the victim to trap you in the victim triangle. The manipulator will exaggerate a personal issue, like a financial woe, to quickly elicit your sympathy. By playing the weak victim, they invent a fake persecutor to blame. And boom, naturally your goodwill takes over, forcing you to step into the role of the obligated rescuer. Before you even realize what's happening, you're trapped, fulfilling their every demand out of a misplaced sense of duty. And this is where things get really insidious. Sociopaths and narcissists rely heavily on these long-term tactics to gain ultimate control, especially gaslighting. The manipulator controls your environment and systematically plants seeds of doubt regarding your own memory and sanity. You start second-guessing your own choices, and eventually you become entirely dependent on the abuser to interpret reality for you. It's this slow, methodical erosion of your independence. Gale's advice for self-defense here is absolutely critical. Document everything, maintain strong external support networks, and trust your own initial perceptions before the manipulator has a chance to rewrite them for you.
The reason this is so incredibly hard to spot is perfectly summed up in the idea that the narcissist has two faces. Gale's case studies are full of individuals who were absolute pillars of their community, charismatic leaders or beloved colleagues who secretly inflicted calculated cruelty on their partners in private. They'll say deeply vicious things in a calm, rational tone of voice behind closed doors, creating a profound cognitive dissonance for the victim. You're just left desperately trying to reconcile this charming public persona with the cold, calculated cruelty they dispense when no one else is watching.
Section 3. The direct attack. Overt manipulation.
Now, if covert manipulation is a slow burn, overt manipulators are a psychological ambush. They do not hide in the shadows. They use direct, immediate weapons aimed at instantaneous success, and they're highly effective against strangers or distant acquaintances. Take your classic aggressive street scammer or an intimidating workplace bully. They employ blunt deception, they use direct punishment to force your compliance, and they aggressively project their own guilt onto you to dominate the situation instantly. There's no subtle, long-term gaslighting here. It is an immediate, in-your-face attack.
So after exploring Gale's unique and, frankly, terrifying framework, from the dark singularity all the way down to the nitty-gritty mechanics of manipulation, we're left with a pretty sobering reality. While I think it's fair we maintain some healthy skepticism about just how rigid that 99% rule truly is, Gale's practical advice on spotting vulnerability cues and resisting these tactics, that is invaluable armor for everyday life. So I want to leave you with a critical question. The next time you're faced with someone's sudden tale of woe or a shockingly calm yet cruel remark, ask yourself, are they truly the victim, or are you already being groomed as the prey? Stay critical, trust your instincts, and keep learning.